welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be filming another tutorial. I'm so excited to be finally making another cactus slash succulent video. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make this adorable little succulent right here. I don't know the correct name for them, I just know that they're really pretty. I already have a video on how to make the string of pearls cactus succulent thing. You can find that on my channel. I'll also have it linked down below. And I also have a video that I'll link down below on how to make your soil. So today we are going to be making this really cute little cactus succulent. So without further ado, what will you need for this project? So I'm going to be using this yarn. It's been in my stash for a really long time. I don't know where it came from or what it's called, but it's about a worsted slash Aran weight yarn. So any green color worsted Aran weight yarn will do. You can even do like a chunky and just go up a needle size. You could do smaller yarn and go down some needle sizes. Just play around with it. This is just going to be the basic recipe on how to make one of these. I'm also going to be using a 4mm crochet hook, and the next things are optional, but I have a little bowl here with a tad bit of water. I have this little sponge paintbrush, and I like to add little tips to the succulent to make it a little bit more realistic. As you saw when I showed you before, I had some purple little tips on it. So I have this paint that's been in my collection for a very long time. I think I got it from Michael's. It's like this magenta-y color. This one's metallic, which kind of adds a cool little sheen to it. But I like to put this in with some water so it's a little bit more liquidy, and then I'll dab it with the sponge at the end. So we'll show you that when we get there. But first things first, we are going to begin. You're also going to want a darty needle to sew everything together when it's all said and done. I have to go grab one after I get to that point. But we are going to go ahead and start with the tutorial. So this is just going to be a basic recipe. As I said, I'm going to show you how to make whatever size I do today. I think I'll make another one of these small ones just for tutorial purposes. But the first thing that I'm going to do is make a slip knot, and I am going to chain 38 chains. So 1. So here's my 38 chains. I recommend just doing them in multiples of 2, but you can really start with however many chains you want. This is just a really simple pattern to play around with. I'm going to show you exactly how I'm going to make this particular one. But again, feel free to play around with the different placements of things. So the first thing I'm going to do after I've chained my 38 chains is I'm going to yarn over and create a double crochet into the 3rd chain for my hook. And I like to go into the back part of the chain, so not the V's, but it doesn't really matter where you go because you won't see this part. So I'm going to place 3 double crochets into the 3rd chain from my hook. And then I'm going to chain 2. And I'm going to place 3 more double crochets into that same stitch. And then I'm going to skip the next stitch, and I'm going to place 1 single crochet into the following stitch. So skip a stitch, a single crochet, and then I'm going to skip the next stitch, and I'm going to repeat the same thing that I just did. So I'm going to put 3 double crochets into that following stitch after our skip stitch. Then I'm going to chain 2, and I'm going to put 3 more double crochets into that same stitch. So this is what we have going so far, and your work will start to like curl a little bit. That's good. That's going to help you later on when you sew everything together to give you a guideline. So you do want it to curl up a little bit. If it's not curling up a little bit, you need to look into maybe spacing things out a little differently because you want a lot of stitches in a short amount of chain. So what we're going to do is repeat that again. We're going to skip the next stitch, single crochet into the following stitch. And we're going to skip the next stitch and place 3 double crochets into the next one. We're going to chain 2, The chain 2 is what's going to give you a little bit of a pointier leaf. If you decide that you don't want it to be a little bit pointy, you can definitely leave the chain 2 off. I just like the little touch that it adds. And then we're going to place 3 more double crochets into that same stitch. All right, so this is what we're working with. We're going to skip the next stitch and place a single crochet into the following stitch. And we're going to skip the next stitch and add 3 more double crochets to the following stitch. Then I'm going to chain 2, and I'm going to place 3 more double crochets into that same stitch. So if you guys can recognize the pattern happening currently, it is going to start forming the very bottom part of our succulent. All right, so we have 4 double crochet clusters, and I think that's all I'm going to do for the double crochets. Now, if you are doing a longer chain and a bigger succulent, you may choose to do more double crochet clusters. You'll just kind of want to work out how many. You'll see the pattern form as we go, so you'll get a better idea of what I'm talking about. But you may want to plan out some more double crochet clusters to take more of the chain. That way when you do the spiral, it kind of gets slowly smaller as you go, as you can see here. So there's bigger leaves on the bottom, some medium leaves, and some smaller leaves as we get closer to the top. You could also, if you're doing an extra large succulent for some reason, which I've definitely done, you could start with a triple crochet and then move to a double crochet, then half double crochet and single crochet like we're about to do. So just definitely play around with your stitches if you're comfortable with that. If not, just follow this tutorial exactly as is. You'll get an idea of how to make it, and then you can go from there and create different size cactuses. So the next step is to skip the next stitch and single crochet into the following stitch like we've been doing. So single crochet. Then we're going to skip the next stitch and we're going to place 3 half double crochets into the following stitch. So we are now working with half double crochets. All right, and once you've done your 3 half double crochets, you're going to chain 2, and you're going to place 3 more half double crochets into that same stitch. All right, and you've guessed it, we're going to skip 1 stitch, single crochet into the following stitch, and we're going to skip the next stitch and we're going to half double crochet 3 times into the following stitch. And then you're going to do your chain 2 and half double crochet 3 more stitches into that same chain. All right, so this is kind of what it's looking like so far. As you can see, it's curling up naturally on its own. That's a good thing. And we have 2 slightly smaller clusters and then 4 larger clusters. So we're going to make another half double crochet cluster. So skip your stitch, single crochet into the next stitch, and then skip the next stitch and 3 half double crochets into the following stitch, chain 2, and 3 more half double crochets into that same stitch. All right, and at this point, I kind of like to curl it up and see if I want to do another half double crochet or if I want to go ahead and start making some more smaller stitches. So this is kind of how it will look when you're forming it. You'll want to form it however you please. I take my chain out and I wrap the chain around to see what I have left. So I think I'm going to work some smaller stitches now. So we're going to go ahead and skip the next stitch and single crochet into the following stitch as we've been doing. We're going to skip the next stitch and then we're going to add 3 single crochets to the next stitch. You're going to chain 2, add 3 more single crochets to that stitch. We're going to skip the next stitch and we're going to slip stitch into the following stitch. So this is where things change a little bit. We're going to go ahead and do just a slip stitch into the next stitch. And then we're going to skip the next stitch and we're going to single crochet 3 stitches into that chain. chain 2, 3 more single crochets into that stitch, and then you'll slip stitch into the last stitch to finish it off. And this is what it will look like once you are to the end of the chain. Again, yours may be bigger or smaller depending on how you decided to start your chain. And you kind of just roll it up. Make sure you're happy with it before you sew everything down, which I am pretty satisfied with that. I think it's just adorable. So I'm going to cut my yarn, grab a darting needle, and I'll come back to show you guys how I add the finishing touches. So leave a longer tail when you cut your yarn. That's to sew everything down. And I am going to go ahead, thread my darting needle, and I'm going to go ahead and close that stitch before I forget. Sometimes I do that. And then I'm going to take the tail that I started with, and I'm just going to tuck that down below. That way it's not poking out anywhere. And the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make sure you're happy with how it looks. So curl it up first into the exact position that you want it to be in. I kind of like to have the stitches, or the leaves rather, off center with each other. So there's one leaf in between 2 leaves and so on and so forth. So I think I'm pretty happy with how this looks. So I'm going to hold it in place with my thumb. You can definitely like pin it together if you're more comfortable with that. And I'm going to start sewing it together. So you'll just sew through all the layers. I like to put the needle through the chain stitches. That way it's clean as can be. And I sew all the way around the spiral until I feel it's secure. So I'll just keep going. And you'll want to keep it adjusted as you go. Make sure everything is still in the same place that you liked it, because you're sewing it down and you're not going to want to rip it out later. And then as you pull it a little bit tight. That way the leaves kind of cup in a little bit. They kind of curl in and they're not just flat. So I'm pretty happy with the way that my succulent is looking. At this point, I would sew it onto the soil of wherever it's going, but I don't know what this is going to go on just yet. So I'm going to leave my tail hanging. I'm going to take my darting needle off so I don't lose it. And then we're going to do the fun painting. So I have my bowl here. As you can see, this is my paint bowl, and I have a little bit of water in there. I'm going to take my paint, and I'm going to squirt just a little bit in there. You don't need a whole lot for this. It's a very small succulent. If you're doing lots, you know, you probably want to just wait until you finish all of them and paint them all together. I'm going to just place this on a paper towel so I don't ruin my table. And I'm going to mix the paint with the water to thin it out. All right, so I have just a nice thin watery paint, as you can see. I don't like this to be very opaque and thick because I don't want to add too much color to the succulent. I want to have a lot of control over it because I want it to look natural. As you can see on this one, I just did the tips and that's how I like it. You could also just leave this blank. I think it's really pretty as is. Sometimes I don't paint them, but I do like that little finishing touch. So I have a little bit of the watery paint on my sponge. I'm going to test it on the paper towel to make sure I'm happy with it. And I'm just going to go in on the tips and just paint. Now, when you do this, you just want to keep it on the tips of the cactus, but you don't want to forget to do the backs of it either because it's not just purple on one side. So be sure to turn over your cactus and also do that part as well. And you want to keep it pretty organic. Don't worry about it being perfect. This is a plant and plants are not perfect. So just go through and sponge away. I do recommend using a sponge for this and not a paintbrush because it's going to give you a cleaner finish and it's going to allow you to blend a lot better. It's super important to blend this stage. You don't want to just put clumps of paint on the leaves. So just add a little to each tip until you're happy with it. Definitely look at a picture of one of these succulents for reference if you aren't feeling confident in your placement of the paint. But I like to just go for it until I'm happy. I'm not very, I don't know. I like the creativeness of adding the paint. And so I like to just do it from my head. And then honestly, I take my fingers and I just dab all the points where I put the paint on, because I think it gives me more control of blending. And I think the blending is super important on this stage. Because like I said, you really want that paint to sit into the yarn. That way it blends and gives you a very natural effect. And it looks like it's supposed to be there and it's not just paint. So I think I'm pretty happy with the way this is looking. So I'll probably let it dry and I think it'll be good to go onto my next arrangement. All right, and there you have it. That is how I make my little succulents. This is ready to go in a pot all by itself or in a little arrangement such as this one. I'm going to add another plant over here. I just haven't decided which one yet. But yeah, super simple. It's very easy to modify. Just start with different amounts of chains. Add as many big leaves as you want, some small leaves and some smaller leaves. That is the key to this. You start with your biggest stitches and then you work your way to the smallest stitches. And in between, you just add a single crochet or even a slip stitch to make sure you get that really nice leaf shape. But that is my tutorial. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave a comment down below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more tutorials like this and other crafty chatter. All right, guys, I'll talk to you later. Bye!